have these. I printed off 12 of them. I can print more afterwards if we need to. This is Mick lovingly puts as the cartoon. We will watch half the cartoon this morning, and so kind of going through this. But this is kind of just a pictorial outline of the Gospel of Matthew, and some of the things that I like to point out about Matthew is it's historically, actually the video talks about it. Historically, we understand it to be the tax collector, but it's very Jewish. It's very Jewish. Like Matthew is Jewish. This is why I try to make a big deal out of the Exodus story and the Christmas story, is that it's showing us the Jewishness, and our friends at the Bible Project in their video, they really they amp that Jewishness up to the next level. And so as we go through this, it's important to notice all those things. And also as we're reading through Matthew here, it's important to notice all the times that the Old Testament gets quoted. And we'll kind of talk, there's a bunch of them right at the top. And so we'll kind of go through some of them. It's also good that this Sunday is Epiphany. Well, at least we're doing Epiphany on Sunday. I think it's actually Saturday. And so I'm kind of hot on some of this Epiphany stuff in Matthew for the sermon on Sunday. So like kind of ready to go. So I can look smarter than I actually am. And so, all right. So what we'll do is we'll watch the Bible Project video. Matthew is so long that they do 2 videos in it. And after we get about halfway through the gospel, we'll watch the second video. So as with always, like those on Zoom, if for whatever reason the echo doesn't go away, like let me know. So here we go. We're gonna share screen. We got this, share sound, optimize for video, and then share. Here we go.
The Gospel according to Matthew. It's one of the earliest official accounts about Jesus of Nazareth, his life, his death, and his resurrection. The book itself is anonymous, but the earliest reliable tradition links it to Matthew the tax collector, who was one of the 12 apostles that Jesus appointed, and he actually appears within the book itself. For about 30 to 40 years, the apostles orally taught and passed on their eyewitness accounts about Jesus, along with his teachings that they had all memorized. And Matthew has then collected and arranged all these into this amazing tapestry and designed the book to highlight certain themes about Jesus. In this video, we're just going to cover the first half of the book. Specifically, Matthew wants to show how Jesus is the continuation and fulfillment of the whole biblical story about God and Israel. That Jesus is the Messiah from the line of David, that he is a new authoritative teacher like Moses, and not only that, Jesus is God with us, or in Hebrew, Emmanuel. And Matthew's designed this book with an introduction and then a conclusion, and these act like a frame around 5 clear sections right here in the center, each of which concludes with a long block of Jesus' teaching. Now, this design is very intentional and it's amazing. Just watch how this works. Chapters 1 through 3, they set the stage by attaching Jesus' story right onto the storyline of the Old Testament scriptures. So Matthew opens with a genealogy about Jesus that highlights how he is from the messianic line of the son of David, and he's a son of Abraham. That means he's going to bring God's blessing to all of the nations. After that, we get the famous story about Jesus' birth and how all of the events fulfilled the Old Testament prophetic promises, that the nations would come and honor the Messiah, that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, but even more than that, Jesus' conception by the Holy Spirit, his name Emmanuel, all these work together to show that Jesus is no mere human. He is God with us, God become human. So you can see 2 of Matthew's key themes right here in the introduction. He's from the line of David, he's Emmanuel. But Matthew also wants to show how Jesus is a new Moses. So like Moses, Jesus came up out of Egypt, he passed through the waters of baptism, and he entered into the wilderness for 40 days. And then Jesus goes up onto a mountain to deliver his new teaching. So through all of this, Matthew is claiming that Jesus is the promised greater than Moses figure who's going to deliver Israel from slavery. He's going to give them new divine teaching. He's going to save them from their sins and bring about a new covenant relationship between God and his people. This Moses and Jesus parallel also explains why Matthew has structured the center of the book the way that he did. These 5 main parts highlight Jesus as a teacher, and he's created a parallel. Jesus as a teacher parallels the 5 books of Moses. Jesus is the new authoritative covenant teacher who's going to fulfill the storyline of the Torah. Now, in the first section, chapters 4 to 7, Jesus steps onto the scene announcing the arrival of God's kingdom, and this is really key. The kingdom is, in essence, about God's rescue operation for his whole world, and it's taking place through King Jesus. Jesus has come to confront evil, especially spiritual evil, and its whole legacy of demon oppression and disease and death. Jesus has come to restore God's rule and reign over the whole world by creating a new family of people who will follow him, obey his teachings, and live under his rule. So, after Jesus begins healing people and forming a movement, a community, he takes his followers out to a mountain or a hillside, and he delivers his first big block of teaching, traditionally called the Sermon on the Mount. And here Jesus explores what it looks like to follow him and live in God's kingdom. And it's an upside-down kingdom where there are no privileged members. So the poor, the nobodies, the wealthy, the religious, everybody is invited and is called to turn, to repent, and to follow Jesus and join his family. Jesus says that he's not here to set aside the commands of the Torah or the Old Testament. Rather, he's here to fulfill all of that through his life, through his teachings. He's here to transform the hearts of his people so that they can truly love God and love their neighbor, including their enemy. After concluding his great teaching on the kingdom, the next section shows Jesus bringing the kingdom into reality in the day-to-day lives of people. So Matthew's arranged here 9 stories about Jesus bringing the power of God's kingdom into the lives of hurting, broken people. There are 3 groups of 3 stories, and they're all about people who are sick or have broken bodies or they're in danger, and Jesus heals or saves them by these acts of grace and power. And then right in between these triads, we find 2 parallel stories about Jesus' call that people should follow him. Matthew's making a point here. One can only experience the power of Jesus' grace by following him and becoming his disciple. Now, after Matthew has shown the power of the kingdom through Jesus, Jesus then extends his reach by sending out the 12 disciples who are going to go do what he's been doing. And this leads to the second large block of teaching, chapter 10. And here, Jesus teaches his disciples how to announce the kingdom and what to expect once they do. Many among Israel are accepting Jesus and his offer of the kingdom, but Israel's leaders, they aren't. They stand to lose a lot if they repent and become disciples of Jesus. And so Jesus knows they're going to reject him and persecute his followers, which is exactly what happens. In the next section, chapters 11 through 13, Matthew has collected a group of stories about how people are responding to Jesus and his message, and it's a mixed bag. So some stories are positive. People love Jesus and they think he's the Messiah. Others are more neutral, like John the Baptist, or even the members of Jesus' own family, and they make it clear that Jesus is not what they expected. And then you have Israel's leaders. They're entirely negative. You have the Pharisees and the Bible scholars. They all reject Jesus together. They think he's a false teacher. He's leading the people astray. They think he's blasphemous in these exalted claims he's making about himself. But Jesus isn't surprised or thrown by all these diverse responses. In fact, he focuses on it in the third block of teaching, chapter 13. Here, Matthew's collected together a bunch of Jesus' parables about the kingdom, like about a farmer throwing seed on 4 types of soil, or about a mustard seed, or a pearl or buried treasure. These parables are like a commentary on the stories that you've just read in chapters 11 and 12. Some people are accepting Jesus with enthusiasm. Others are rejecting him. But God's kingdom is of ultimate value, and it will not stop spreading despite all of these obstacles. So that's the first half of the Gospel according to Matthew. Now here's a few more things to look for as you read through these chapters. Matthew's presenting Jesus, remember, as the continuation and fulfillment of the Old Testament storyline. So look for how he weaves in quotations from the Old Testament scriptures. And what you'll find is that they're placed at strategic points in the story, explaining more about Jesus and his identity. So stop, take time to go look up these references and read them in their Old Testament context. And most often you'll discover really cool, interesting connections. Lastly, pay attention to the types of people who accept Jesus and follow him. And you'll see that it's most often people who are unimportant, they're nobodies, or they're irreligious. And these are the people who are transformed by their trust or faith in Jesus and follow him. And it's the religious and the prideful who are offended by him. So how is this tension between Jesus and Israel's leaders going to play itself out? That's what the second half of Matthew is all about.
All right.
Very interesting. Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm not contagious. I have a deviated septum, and sometimes I have these coughing attacks. So
You've been
I'm
contagious for
sorry
years.
on
now.
that. Spreading it all around.
Can't get away from you. Hello, man. Back in there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So all right. So the things that I want to point out specifically is they kind of talked about the Jewishness of it, with the line of David, the Messiah, the new Moses, and the Emmanuel, God with us. But the important thing is the tapestry that it talks about. This is incredibly important. It's incredibly important to me. If you notice, I rarely see what the other gospels are talking about. Like sometimes we will look at how they're rendering one of these stories, but Matthew isn't writing like an encyclopedia entry. He's telling us who Jesus is in his estimation, and he's using these well-known stories of Jesus to tell a certain tale. We went through Mark, 2 years ago? Is that when we went through Mark? And it was a similar thing. Mark is weaving a certain tale. So we are going to see the tale that Matthew is weaving for us so that he can tell us about Jesus and who Jesus is. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today, and we'll get to do it our normal way. We're kind of going through all of this. Was there anything? Did anyone have anything about that video that they wanted to say? Anything like that? You go. Well, if you do a Google search for Bible Project Matthew, you can find that and watch it again, and it just goes through this. It just goes through this thing. So, yeah. And
Parallels between Moses and Jesus. I had never,
yeah, the
realized that.
the Moses connection is good there.
Just a ignorant question.
Yeah,
Why do they call it the Torah?
the Torah, like the law type of thing.
Why do they call it the law?
Do you have a good answer for that? I'm not going to step up for that. It's
Where did it originate from?
so what?
The law of Moses.
Yeah, the law of Moses.
Okay, so from Moses, so like commandments and
Yeah,
Take
and
the
the Torah. You also have the Pentateuch is kind of considered the Torah, and and that's the first 5 books in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so you got the first 5 there are kind of the quintessential. Those stand up higher than all the other books. Okay. Those are it type of thing. And so Tim Mackey is the author of that video.
and I could Google it. Look at
Yeah. And he is equating the 5 books of Moses, that the first 5, to these like 5 sections of Jesus' life and things like that. And we're gonna kind of work through those and kind of see it in there. But this is all the Messiah line through David, the new Moses, and God with us, or Emmanuel, is it's very Jewish. It's very Jewish. And Matthew is weaving this tale of Jesus being very Jewish, but he's going to blast him out of that, as we're going to see too, that he's like the ultimate Jewish king. As we know, like Epiphany, we have the Magi come, and that's kind of like quintessential Hebrew king, that he comes and the other nations come and notice the goodness as well. All right. Okay.
Questions.
Yeah.
What do you really feel that the Jewishness is? Just the fact that he's correlating?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like that. It's all this quintessential like Jewish Messiah stuff. It's hearkening back to that. And Matthew is going to quote the Old Testament constantly, and we'll see that today. We'll see that today.
Question.
Yeah.
Where it said, some believe, some are so. And
Yeah.
it's pretty much the Sanhedrin and so forth that don't believe it. Do we still know why to this day, why in Judaism rejects?
It's so I don't know if that. I mean, we still have other people that reject. I think the way that I put it, and we'll get into this as we go through, but like his things to look for, the number 2, the irreligious and the unimportant are the ones that kind of come. The way I've always kind of looked at it, it's those with something to lose normally don't like Jesus. Like that's it's those with something to lose, and so like the Pharisees, they have power to lose. That was kind of what our Mark thing is. I got to be careful I don't go. Mark's my favorite gospel. It's the best one, and so I like that. That's
interesting. The ELCA Study Bible says the Gospel of Mark was probably written by an unknown author, but later the 2nd century attributed to Matthew, but probably was not.
Matthew was written.
Matthew.
Yeah.
But it says the unknown author used the Gospel of Mark plus other hidden sources.
And so well, let's go back to that tapestry point. What these gospel writers were doing is we digest information completely differently than they did. Everything was oral tradition back then. Now in our minds, we're like, oh no, oral tradition, that's terrible. Well, the way just it functioned, it was actually a really good means of making sure the story was being communicated correctly and all of that. So what Matthew and the other gospel writers are doing, they're taking all these oral traditions that they're hearing and they're compiling in them and crafting a story of Jesus. Like that's, and don't be scared of that word story. I was brought up that it's not a story, it's the truth. Like I could tell you the story about how we got up and back from Atlanta for Christmas, like that. Don't be scared of the word story. And so, but he's wanting us to see something about Jesus. And that's why he writes it. Nothing is written on January 3rd, year 3, this happened, like that's not what's going on.
Is this a real tension that it brings up? Who wrote what when?
Well, I would say with some people, yeah. It's over there. What I like, and this is I'm kind of dumb, and I kind of try to lean into the dumbness, and I try to go for, was it Occam's razor, like the simplest explanation type of thing. So what I like doing is and Tim Mackey, I probably get this from Tim Mackey, the guy who did this. Like he goes, the earliest tradition is that Matthew, the tax collector, was the author. That's it goes. So I kind of rest in that. Does that have to be? Does it change anything to me if that's not true? No. Like that's because it's whoever the author is. they're wanting us to tell this tale, you know? So some people lose lots of sleep, there's lots of ink poured, and God bless those people. They're doing the work that I don't want to do, right? But like that's, and so,
To what end, though? It's still not.
yeah, they're just trying to find out what's going on. There's also people that like to write books that compile all the Gospels together. I'm not big into those. Some people really like them. I'm not big into this, because I think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have written their own stories.
Why not the story?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I kind of think like mystery books written by Ken Grisham, and you'll go to the library and you'll say Ken Grisham and Johnny Smith. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe Ken Grisham didn't write it actually, but he assisted and helped in some way. And
It could be.
and there's nothing to say that Matthew couldn't look at previous oral tradition and whatever, or even writings, because people in those days, in order to get something read, would probably attribute it to something more important.
Well, and also think about what we know about the apostle Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, but he's also very Jewish, remember? So he is those people that are irreligious and unimportant. You know, he is that. Like that's to be a tax collector and Jewish at the same time meant something went wrong. I think I preached about it 3 weeks ago. So like that's all there. So that's what's happening there. So kind of find yourself falling into the story. I will encourage you to just read the whole book, like try to do it in a sitting. Maybe two. This one's a little longer than Mark, because Mark was like 2.5 hours. It's pretty easy to nail to the wall in an afternoon. Matthew's a little longer than that. But let the story kind of wash over you. And Sheila, since you're the newest member of the Bible study here, so what we'll do here in a second is we'll actually listen to a section of it being read by a dramatized version. We use that dramatized version is the New King James. That's what I have right here, but I also have an NIV right here. Use whatever translation you want to, because and if your translation says something significantly different, point it out. Like, because I like multiple uses of translations, and we can usually suss it out. And sometimes we'll go look at the Greek and see what it's actually saying and all that stuff too. Also, there is such a thing as a dumb question, or such a thing as a stupid question, right? Like but often those dumb questions get us to good ones. So ask whatever you want. All right. So that's.
And that was supposed to be reassuring?
Well, I have to throw every little bit of positivity cloaked with some negative, or it's just not Chris Asher. like that's.
Okay,
Yeah.
Somebody else will be upset about that.
All right. So we're going to start with the genealogy, and so I was trying to figure out how to go through it. I think we'll just listen to it, and we'll just listen to genealogy. And so we're going to read chapter 1 through 17. And I want you to be looking for the people that sound familiar, right? And that's kind of the purpose behind this. So here we go. Oh no, hold on. I gotta get my screens right. Gotta get my screens right. I blame Ed Watts. That's let's see here. Yeah, good.
He has broad shoulders.
Yeah. All right, here we go. All right, share. Okay.
The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. And Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. Judah begot Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez begot Hezron, and Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king. David the king begot Solomon by her, who had been the wife of Uriah. Solomon begot Rehoboam. Rehoboam begot Abijah, and Abijah begot Asa. Asa begot Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat begot Joram, and Joram begot Uzziah. Uzziah begot Jotham. Jotham begot Ahaz, and Ahaz begot Hezekiah. Hezekiah begot Manasseh. Manasseh begot Ammon, and Ammon begot Josiah. Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begot Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begot Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel begot Abiud. Abiud begot Eliakim, and Eliakim begot Azar. Azar begot Zadok. Zadok begot Achim, and Achim begot Eliad. Eliad begot Eleazar. Eleazar begot Mathan, and Mathan begot Jacob. And Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David until the captivity in Babylon are 14 generations. And from the captivity in Babylon until the Christ are 14 generations.
Okay. All right, let's just talk about that for a second. So what stood out to you?
23andMe.
23andMe? Okay.
And the women.
The women? Yeah. There's a few women in there, and that is incredibly important. Like it's incredibly important for any woman to get recognized in a genealogy like that is saying something. And so that's I mean, even today it's saying something that we have people, even our own church body, that like to have strong opinions about such things. That the fact that women are mentioned in the genealogy is a big deal. Okay, so that's you have that. What else did you notice?
Is the Rahab mentioned? Is it the Rahab?
Yeah, that's the Rahab. Like, so that's the Rahab. And so not only is she a woman, but she's woman of the night, right? And helped out the was it gosh, it's escaping. Yeah, the spies. So that's and so in the book, it's the book that's the spies in right before Jericho. Josiah? No. Joshua. I knew it was a J. Like that's my name. Oh, that's terrible. So like in the book of Josiah. So she was a prostitute, shielded the spies, and she is mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. So you can see already Matthew is hearkening back to a very Jewish story, right? Very Jewish story, but he's also making sure we look at the things that aren't so perfect. You know, like that's where you're seeing something coming through, even through the genealogy here. You're seeing this, the tale is already being woven. So what else stood out to you? Anyone else?
Pastor, in talking about Rahab, again, isn't Matthew kind of starting to let you know that you don't have to be these perfect people to be within the line of Jesus? I mean, Ruth was married to Rahab was, as you say, a woman of the night.
Yeah.
Because later Matthew says it's the people who don't believe, the people who are lowly, the people who are ostracized, who are drawn to Jesus.
Yeah.
And here you have, like you said, not only two women, but two women who were not necessarily considered appropriate in the Jewish line of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think that has a big to do with it, which we also see. She's not really mentioned specifically, but at the end of verse 6, it says Jesse begot David the king, and David the king begot Solomon by her who had been the wife of Uriah. Like even the way it puts that, it could have said just Bathsheba or something like that. Like it made sure that you knew the indiscretion that we're talking about.
Too.
Yeah, they mentioned Tamar.
Weird thing with Tamar and Judah.
Which one though? You know?
What do you mean?
Tamar.
Oh,
Because there were two.
there were two. I don't.
She was promised to his son, right? And then he came in and
That's one.
yeah.
There was another one that
But
was
she's, I think,
unclean.
yeah,
Which Tamar? What are you talking about?
yeah,
It's his daughter-in-law.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then he went in and slept with her, and she kept his sword. And then when she was,
Yeah.
yeah, to prove that it was him.
Dispatch.
Yeah, dispatch.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, so you see all these stories, and then it gets us up to Joseph, who is the husband of Mary, and then he does this interesting move where he does the 14 generations. That's fascinating. And is there 3 of them? Like there's 14 generations, 14 generations, and 14 generations.
7 and 7.
Yeah. And so, and 7 is an incredibly important number because it's like the 7 days of creation. 7 has this like completeness idea. So he's definitely calling us back to this idea of this like completeness in through this, and kind of showing us this fulfillment of Jesus, the Messiah, right here in the beginning. And so we're already, just 17 verses in, and we're already seeing the color of the tapestry that's being woven in with this in the story. And it's just names. And so that's pretty cool. All right, before we go on, does anyone have anything else?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Everywhere else that a woman's name in here, it's named that it's the father who got somebody through this woman.
Yeah.
So the genealogy is always following through the fathers.
Yeah.
Until we get down to Mary, because Joseph is not the father of Jesus.
Yeah. But it's interesting that it still goes through his line. And Luke does
through the line, but
does different. Luke handles it differently. Like that's.
I'm not troubled by it. It's going to look, but
yeah, it's interesting.
We say that Jesus is of the line of David, but he doesn't technically come out of that line.
Yeah.
Yep. And Kermit's got it figured out.
No.
No.
I think it's a little figured out. In terms of your emphasis on the Jewishness of it, Jewishness descends through the female line, but this is male.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's interesting, but it begs your description of it being absolutely Jewish.
Yeah.
Where that's fundamental in terms of Judaism. It's descending through the female.
Oh, really?
Is there more modern Jews though? Does that go way back?
No. That's Judaism. There's no modernism about it. You are a Jew if your mother was a Jew.
Nope. I will argue that point.
Okay.
It wasn't until the Middle Ages that they started through the woman's line. If you read a lot of the commentaries by some of the rabbis, it wasn't until the Middle Ages when they started having it through the female line. Up until the Middle Ages, the female line was not mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's so you could see what's written on the page here. You can see what is going on though. Like it's going through the maleness of the line. It's obviously going through that because it's mentioning Joseph. But it's also, it says who's just the husband of Mary, who of whom born Jesus, who is called the Christ. Now, we see that Mary's also in that same kind of line through David too, but that's not how Matthew renders it. So that's over there. So the 14th generation. So is there anything else?
Really, in modern times, would it matter? Would we really care if Jesus was from the line of Abraham? I mean, being German.
But would it? Oh.
You know what I mean? Why care?
Yeah. Well, but I think what it's doing, especially for us, it's looking at it's showing us all these stories that we are aware of, all throughout the scriptures. And I think that's kind of the point there, like that's and that it's bringing us into the story. And that's kind of what I mean by the Jewishness, that it's bringing us in through all of those stories. And it's a big deal that the ladies were mentioned back then. It's a big deal.
But is that not possibly why the Jews of the day rejected Jesus? Because he was saying, this is not my father, God is my father. Is that not another reason?
Well, we can get to that. We can get to that as we go forward, because it's basically Jesus' family rejects him. So like that's and all that stuff. So we will get to that. We will get to that. All right. So let's see. How much should we read? How much should we read?
I would just say that if I didn't believe that God was his father,
yeah,
and then I knew David wasn't his father, then I'd be saying, saying Paul was Shia,
yeah,
and is he really a Jew?
Yeah, and that's very true, and that's very true.
But his father, who rejected him, also nurtured him, fed him, taught him to be a carpenter.
Yeah.
So he wasn't totally rejected by his family.
Yeah. No. He wasn't. No, he wasn't totally rejected. It's just his brothers end up not believing him. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that as we go through. So let's read 18 of chapter 1, verse 18 through chapter 2, and make special notes of when you see Old Testament passages coming out. All right, so let's. You like see if you can find that donkey. See if you can.
Even I.
See if you can find that donkey. That's another insight.
Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. But while he thought about these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream.
Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins.
So all this was done, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet.
Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel,
which is translated, God with us. Then Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son. And he called his name Jesus. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem,
"Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him."
When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born.
"In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, 'But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.'"
Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem.
"Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also."
When they heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream.
"Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him."
When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet.
"Out of Egypt I called my son."
Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet.
"A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more."
Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt.
"Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who sought the young child's life are dead."
Then he arose, took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets.
"He shall be called a Nazarene."
Okay. All right. What stood out to you? What stood out to you? There's lots going on here. So let's go.
Lots of quotations.
There's lots of quotations.
Exodus, Passover, referred to.
Yeah, oh yeah. The Exodus, like that. That's Exodus in multiple times. Let's go back, before we get into all the others, let's go back to the end of chapter 1. What stood out to you? What stood out to you there? Like that's the call of Joseph, basically. Was there a donkey? That's a joke. That's a joke way around here. Like that's the So like we have the call of Joseph, right? The call of Joseph, and then behold,
No census either.
there's no census either. That's Luke. Yeah. So we do have the quote that's given on verse 23. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they are calling him Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. Now remember Tim Mackey's thing. It's all about God with us, New Moses, and David, right? So we're seeing this line go through David, and we're definitely going to be seeing, as we get into the Exodus stuff coming forward, New Moses stuff, and we're seeing these being called Emmanuel. And this all comes at the end of Matthew as well. But that verse, 23, is from Isaiah chapter 7, specifically Isaiah 7:14. What's interesting, let's see how good you guys are. What's going on in this area? What's going on in Isaiah chapter 6? Does anyone remember off the top of their head?
Isaiah 6.
Yeah, Isaiah 6. Do you remember? Like, you guys all know it, and you're going to feel sheepish. That's the call of Isaiah, you know? Like, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? You know, like the charcoal briquette on the tongue, and like all that. Here am I, Lord, send me. Right? Like that's this whole thing. Now, what is happening when Joseph when Matthew is quoting scripture? He's quoting it, and this is something we instinctively know, but we've gotten trained out of us, I fear. It's wanting us to remember how we feel when we read that passage, okay? And I have evidence for this here in a second. I'm quickly running out of time, but we'll get to it. And but it's wanting us to feel. My best way I understand this is if I quote Harry Potter. If I quote the book and it says, and I quote, "The boy who lived." And if I quote that takes you to a place that isn't just those words. It's you're reminded of Voldemort and Harry's mom and dad, and just like the arc of the story. Some of you are like, I have no idea what you just said. Like that. But for those of you who do know, that phrase isn't about just that phrase. So when Matthew is quoting this, he's going back, and it's like you're looking at through a window, right? And when you far away from the window, you can only see just a little bit. But when you get up close to the window, and Matthew is bringing us close to the window, and we can look all around of what's happening. So these Old Testament scriptures, I think, is what's happening here. I could be wrong. I'm not. And so you're looking around, and so you're seeing everything that's going around. So all around this verse is I'm a people I'm a person that's surrounded by a people of unclean lips. And we see in chapter 7, which is the actual chapter this is quoted from. Remember, things weren't broken up into chapters back then. And that it's all about how no one is worthy. Everyone is terrible. like that's, no one is worthy. Everyone is let's see here. Where does it say? I was going to read something. Okay, yeah, verse 13 of chapter 7 of Isaiah. You don't have to go back there if you don't want to, but it says, and Isaiah said, "Hear now, you house of David. Is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign, a virgin will conceive," and all that stuff. He's, even in this one verse, he's talking about them not getting it. Right? And so the absurdity of God coming and giving you a sign through a virgin it's the absurd. You don't get the obvious stuff. So we got to do absurd stuff. And that's what gets quoted here. And so we're beginning the story of Matthew. He's weaving, we can see the colors because we're going to see all these people that should be following him, like Jewish kings, like Herod, like Pharisees and all that stuff, have no time for it. And that's what's going on in Isaiah right there. And in that one passage, it's wrapping all this feeling around it of the inadequacy of it. And it's talking about, well, God is coming in Emmanuel, even in the midst of all that inadequacy. Yeah.
But the true malice that I'm reading,
Malice.
yeah,
Okay.
begins with Herod killing the other children. Did not the people generally accept the birth of Jesus as something, the Jewish people that knew of it, accepted as something great and wonderful? And would not have history been different if Herod had spared all the children?
I don't think they all had television and radio, and the newspaper did not cover it. I know that.
Yeah, you know that?
Over here.
You went to the library?
But still.
Yeah.
They might not have done.
Let's get there. Let's get there.
The shepherds knew. I mean, the star was there, so word of mouth.
So the shepherds are there. They're not here though. They're not in Matthew. They're not in Matthew. So like we gotta pull ourselves into just the story that Matthew is telling to see what he's trying to say. So he does now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. This is chapter 2, verse 1. In the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. And so it suddenly talks about these wise men coming who are Gentiles, who are outsiders, who are all these things, but they're people of importance, these magi, right? And that's a big marker of Messiah throughout the Old Testament. You know, like this, the Jewish Messiah is coming in and is coming and seeing the new king. The other nations are coming to him, right? So that's kind of the story that's being told. Now, what is the star? They're following a star. Like, does anyone have any fun theories? We went to the planetarium, and it's like it's like, what is it, Jupiter and Venus or something like that? Yeah.
What I got from the planetarium that I never really thought about, it made it seem like it wasn't like this bright star pointing down, like how it was the movement of the stars that they saw that they knew, okay, a king was being born. And that's why I think why they went to Jerusalem first, because they expected to find the baby in the palace. It was, and so I don't think, like, I always thought, well, why didn't anyone else see that star? So then it reappeared as they got near Bethlehem and showed them where he was.
And it was word of mouth all of a sudden.
Yeah, so here's, I have a weird crackpot theory, all right? So you could take this or leave it. I think this is another reference to the Exodus. I think the pillar of fire. And so so the reason why I get there is in where is that? I thought I'd be able to find it quickly. I'm not. Okay, yeah. So before the pillar of fire goes, God says in Exodus chapter 23, verse 20, he says, behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you into the place which I prepared. Angel's kind of a bad translation, but angel in the Old Testament and New isn't kind of how we consider it. But I think that angel is what, and it's kind of what is being assumed in the text here is what creates that pillar of fire and that pillar of cloud by day and the fire at night. And the reason why I like that, and there's a reason why I like that, is that then you have these foreign magi following through the wilderness of outside of God's people, right? Following that pillar of fire like God's people were to the Messiah. Like that's, so like, I think that's why I like that. And that's new for me. Like I've been reading a bunch lately and I've been like, oh, that's an interesting thing. So it could be Jupiter and like all that stuff but I really like that sense of like, it's that we'll call it an angel, kind of like the pillar of fire by day and night. You got the report of that. Have you heard that before? Yeah, with the star. Okay. Oh, from me. I don't even remember how smart I am. All right. So like that. That's and so then we get to Herod, and this is important too. Going back to like the Isaiah passage, like you try the patience of humans, will you not try the patience of the Lord as well? That Herod looks more like a pharaoh than he looks like a Jewish king. He should be all about the Messiah, but what is he all about? Killing him, right? Like get out about. Like if he's the true Jewish, if Herod is the true Jewish Messiah king, and there's one that's being promised as like the true Messiah, then he should be excited. But instead, he is cosplaying Pharaoh, like, which is what you were talking about. Like that's and like that whole thing. Now, I think it's interesting that in verse 6 of chapter 2, it quotes, "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, aren't you the least among the rulers?" And that is quoting Micah chapter 2.
5:2.
Oh, 5 chapter 2. Maybe 5 verse 2. And what's interesting about that is chapter 4 of Micah is talking about the restoration. Where did I see that? Okay, like that's. Oh, chapter 4 of Micah is talking about this kind of ideal restoration of peace on earth, of swords being beaten into plowshares. So swords with articles of war being destroyed for the tree of life, you could say, for the creation, right? And so you have this. So think about what Matthew's doing in this story. It's fascinating. He's causing us to look through this window of the Old Testament to remember, yes, the humbleness of Bethlehem. To remember the humbleness of Bethlehem, but also to remember the restoration that's being spoken of beating war instruments into farming equipment, and calling that, and Herod's reading that to these guys, right, over there. But Herod is about to get so upset that he's going to turn farming equipment into war weapons, basically. Like that's not what actually happens, but like over that. So I think that's kind of fascinating. So you're seeing this tale, all this color has been given this tapestry as we are launching into Jesus' life. That the story of his birth in Matthew is telling us who he is. It's setting all the colors to this as we go forward. So the wise men come, they give them the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I can't remember what those things, like the myrrh is like a burial thing. Mm-hmm. Well, what's frankincense? Gold is obviously wealth for a king.
Perfume, like
Perfume.
Myrrh is.
Same well that uses on his feet.
Okay, so myrrh is the oil of anointing, and frankincense is the burial.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? So I don't know, but that's I should have looked that up. But those are being used as well.
Myrrh is bitter perfume.
Yeah,
it's the life of gathering.
I know. We're singing gates on Sunday, and we're doing all the verses. So we're going through all the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. Like that's so. I was kind of getting that ready. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not sure if I sang all the verses before.
I can't wait.
You can't wait?
Sure.
It's a nice song on it too. Like it's got some drums in the background. That's good. Yeah, watch out. Watch out. Yeah. And so, and then let's see here. So then we have, so Herod looks like Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like Pharaoh, and then the Holy Family seeks refuge. This is like the sermon right now. Like seeks refuge in Egypt, right? Which is odd and gosh, all right. Can't quote the sermon. Yeah, like that's, it's backwards from all of that, and it gets us to that point in Hosea where it says, "Out of Egypt I've called my son," and so that. Did I have Hosea here? No, I had I had Jeremiah. That's right. Which one was the Jeremiah quote? Oh yeah. So that is. So when Herod is looking like Pharaoh, and it quotes, "A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they're no more." That's quoting Jeremiah chapter 31. And this plays huge, so I'm ruining the sermon for you. This is basically what the sermon's about this Sunday. But I'll let you guys hear it twice here. Is that what's cool about that is, so Jeremiah is just a downer the entire book. It's just a downer, except for like 3 or 4 chapters right in the middle of it, when it talks about the restoration of Israel. This verse 18 of thing that's quoting Jeremiah 31:15 is the one downer verse amongst all the hope in Jeremiah. So I think what is going on in Matthew is that he's using the one downer verse amongst all the hope in the midst of Jeremiah to bring us into this story and go, yes, this looks bad. It's a recognition of the bad, but there's hope all around. There's hope all around, which that's kind of the way the gospel is. It looks like, especially with the crucifixion, right? That, yeah, this looks bad, but there's hope all around. Like Easter is just right there. Like that's all those things. And so, and then we get to the end where he's risen up in Nazareth. Nazareth, I can't prove this, but I've looked it up enough and I've seen it written down enough that Nazareth means the sticks, which I really like that. That's so Jesus grew up in the sticks, grew up in South Dakota. No, sorry. Our favorite around here. Yeehaw Junction. Yeah. That's
Nazareth, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no.
Eastern Pennsylvania.
So it's but he's from the middle of nowhere. And so New Jersey. And so you're seeing the colors of the tapestry of this story being woven in here as we begin it. That Matthew is using Christ's birth to begin to tell the story and to bring out all this color in it. That it's kind of the low and the outsiders and all of that they're going to play, and the people that should know it don't get it. And that even in the dark places that there's hope all around. And so that's kind of how Matthew begins, at least how I see it. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to say before we end?
Can you send us a picture, copy of the handout that you used?
Okay, yeah. If you Google Bible Project Matthew, it'll come up. But I can send it to you.
I think this doesn't really mean anything, but I think it's interesting. It's the way that Matthew has them coming back. Like they weren't originally from Nazareth because he was afraid to go to Judea.
Yeah.
And then he turned aside and went to Nazareth.
Yeah.
But in Luke, it says they returned to their town, Nazareth. But I just,
It's got the little shadows and colorization different.
Right.
Yeah.
Where they came from.
originally, right.
Yeah. It kind of doesn't. Where was? Where was it? You did. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really talk about where Joseph's from, does it? And so, like, that's. I mean, all it says is that now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. I love that about Matthew, because when we get I watch I shouldn't get jollies off of this. I watch people's Christmas delight just evaporate when they're like, all of my favorite parts of the Christmas story are located in a half a verse there. But Luke has it all. And so that's kind of what's going on there. So
Just one more thing, sorry.
No.
So in Luke, it says that the angel Gabriel went to Nazareth to tell.
Okay.
No, they were from there then.
Yeah. And so Luke is establishing that Mary is from the States. Yeah, all that stuff. She's from the middle of nowhere. And Matthew puts them there, that Jesus comes out of the sticks, which fits. It fits because that's the whole sense of Abraham. That's the whole sense of, them coming out of the wilderness. Jesus is now going to go into the wilderness for 40 days. Like that's the whole point. Like David from Jesse, he wasn't worth anything, so they kept him out in the fields. They even bring him up to Samuel, to be king. So it's great. It's good storytelling. Like that's, I like it. So
Back then, that whole area was the sticks.
Yeah, the sticks. Yeah. It's the cradle of civilization, though, right? Like that. But good deal. So for everyone streaming on the on the YouTube stuff, thanks for joining us today. All right, so.